and straight black pride, brothers and sisters. This is your brother, DC Radical One, with another radical report. And today we will discuss the infuriating and unbelievable case of Dexter Wade. The story has now reached a national audience. But Mr. Wade was a black man in Jackson, Mississippi, who was either accidentally or not so accidentally run down by an off-duty police officer. At least that is the story that the police are telling us at the moment. The case is under investigation. It has reached the national news, and we will discuss the case because it's actually been going on for much longer than most people know. And so we will look at a couple of articles and a couple of videos. So with that, let's go to the article. All right, brothers and sisters, let's start with our first article. It's from NBC News, and this is from about a month ago. It says a mother reported her son missing in March. Police kept the truth from her for months. It says Dexter Wade search for her adult son ended when she discovered that an officer had run him over, and without telling her, authorities buried him in a pauper's field. It says 7 months of searching for her lost son brought Dexter Wade to a dirt road leading into the woods, past an empty horse stable and a scrapyard. The last time she'd seen her middle child, Dexter Wade, 37, was on the night of March 5th, as he left home with a friend. She reported him missing, and Jackson police told her they'd been unable to find him, she said. So let's stop right there. Yeah, reading this and then going by, and we'll see, I believe in one of the other articles, what they said happened. The fact that they claimed that they were looking for him and couldn't find him, someone is lying, in my opinion. But you know what? Let's read further into it, because I've read through this and I've looked at the case. So this is one of the rare times I'm jumping ahead. So let me get back to the article before we get into the commentary. But as this case goes on, if you're not familiar with it, as you read and listen and research, you will become infuriated as I am. Now, it wasn't until 172 excruciating days after his disappearance that Dexter learned the truth. Dexter had been killed less than an hour after he left home, struck by a Jackson police car as he crossed a nearby interstate highway. Police had known Dexter's name and hers, but failed to contact her, instead letting his body go unclaimed for months in the county morgue. Let's stop right there. It says 172 days, which is, we know, that's basically half a year. We will see later that the police were familiar with Mr. Wade, and yet this is the outcome. It says now it was early October, and Dexter had finally been told where she could find her son. She pulled up to the gates of the Hinds County Penal Farm, her sister in the passenger seat, a sheriff's deputy and 2 jumpsuited inmates in a pickup told her to follow them. They bounced down the road and curved into the woods, crawling past clearings where rows of small signs jutted from the earth, each marked with a number. And we can see that here with the numbers. And I believe we will see that in one of the videos as well. She said, "Girl, look at this. Would you believe they would bury someone out here?" The caravan came to the end of the road at another clearing with more markers. The deputy took one of Bedeston's hands, her daughter the other, and they walked to the mounds of loosely packed earth. They stopped at grave 672. "Really?" Bedeston said. That's the kind of really that black people say when they just can't believe what they're looking at and you're exasperated. That really. She bent over, hands on her knees. She cried out, her voice echoing off the surrounding trees. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." And I mean, she had nothing to be sorry about. The police murdered this man or accidentally killed him, or whatever the case was. But whatever took place, it was the fault of police, and everything that took place subsequent to his death is the fault of the police. Now, they give us a background, and as we get into the background, we'll see that he's definitely known. It says, growing up in Jackson, Dexter was a sweet little boy, sharp with computers, a leader amongst classmates, a lover of nice clothes, a dreamer who hoped one day to run his own business, refurbishing old cars. That went awry in his teens when he quote-unquote got lost under the influence of older men who stole cars and did drugs, Bedeston said. A single mother of three who worked at night, Bedeston said she wasn't always around for Dexter, but she always bailed him out of jail and he always returned home, Bedeston said. It's very unfortunate that his life, or what's outlined here as his life and the path he took, is a path that many brothers over the last 40 years have taken with the drug epidemic that hit Black America starting in the 80s, although depending on where you live, certain parts, even in the 70s with heroin, and then of course the crack epidemic in the 80s. This becomes a familiar story, but this outcome has a twist to it. Says although Dexter's boyhood aspirations did not come true, he and a girlfriend, Candace Thomas, had two daughters who remained a bright spot for him, even after the couple's romantic relationship dissolved. Even after Dexter served 2 stints in prison, one for attempted auto theft, the other for armed robbery. According to the Mississippi Department of Corrections, he was released in 2017. When he got out, Dexter remained friends with Thomas and was a committed father, she said. Although Thomas had full legal custody, Dexter talked to his daughters often and visited them in Gulfport, 3 hours away. During the summers, they came up to stay with him at Bedeston's home in Jackson. He was sweet and loving, especially when it came to his kids, Thomas said. But prison had clearly damaged him. You could look in his eyes and see he wasn't the same person. I could tell he was struggling mentally. Dexter was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, Bedeston said. After starting medication, he decreased his illegal drug intake and stayed at home most of the day, cleaning and taking care of the yard. He liked to give homemade ice pops to kids on the street, handed food to people who didn't have homes, and occasionally sold sodas and chips in the neighborhood. He rarely left the house for more than a day or two without calling, Bedeston said. He never showed signs of wanting to hurt himself. He didn't seem like he was in a bad place, Bedeston said, but I don't know what happened that particular day. On March 5th, Bedeston, a retired Nissan line technician who worked part-time as a home health aide, returned home and found one of her windows broken. She and Dexter argued about it, and around 7:30 he left with a friend. Days passed without a word. On March 14th, Bedeston called the Jackson Police Department to report him missing. The decision to call the police was difficult for Betterston. She did not trust them. In 2019, her 62-year-old brother died after a Jackson officer slammed him to the ground. The officer was convicted of manslaughter, but is appealing. Her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit accusing Jackson officers of excessive force in attempting to cover up their actions, and accusing the city of failing to properly train and supervise their officers. Okay, stop right there. This is the part of the story that I did not hear about before. So, all right, let's think about this. Mr. Wade has been incarcerated, which means he was arrested, excuse me. And his case was adjudicated and he was incarcerated, which means the local police, since we understand he was arrested, his crime was local, are familiar with him. They know who he are. They've arrested him. They have paperwork on him. The Department of Corrections stated that earlier, in the article. In addition to that, his mother's brother, meaning his uncle, was killed by the local police, the Jackson Police Department. So the family, Mr. Wade is known by the police. The family is known by the police. And now here we are, while a wrongful death lawsuit is still taking place, suddenly Mr. Wade is killed, admittedly by the police. They haven't admitted any intention, but admittedly by the police, and we'll get to that part shortly. Her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit accusing Jackson officers of excessive force and attempting to cover up their actions, and accusing the city of failing to properly train and supervise the officers. The city had denied the claims and said it wasn't liable for what happened. I'm not understanding that line of reasoning of how they're not. If an officer commits a crime take a minute to process that, because I don't understand that, but whatever. I'm not a lawyer. The officer's lawyer said that they acted responsibly and lawfully. A federal judge dismissed some of Betterston's claims. Others remain pending in state court. Betterston said her mother advised her not to call the police about Dexter. Let's think about that. I mean, it is Mississippi, but I remember Minister Malcolm X saying something to the effect, as long as you cover the Canadian border, you in Mississippi. Something to that effect. I rearranged it. So, it says an investigator came to Betterston's house and took a statement. She emailed the investigator a picture of Dexter. He left a card with a case number on it. 2 days later, she emailed a different investigator another photo of her son. The original investigator filed an incident report that misspelled Dexter's name as Dexter, D-E-S-T-E-R, as opposed to Dexter, D-E-X-T-E-R. Betterston said she kept in regular touch with police, asking for updates and requesting that they put his picture on TV. She did her own search, checking out abandoned homes and driving around her neighborhood asking if anyone had seen him. She never found the friend who left home with him, and that's weird. I wonder what's the whereabouts of that person, but that's another story. Dexter's teen daughters and their mother grew frantic, calling Betterston for news. The girls would ask, "Did you hear from my daddy?" Thomas said, "We just kept praying he was all right." Carrie Banks, a close friend of Betterston's, accompanied her on searches of the neighborhood and watched as stress and desperation wore on her. She called someone every week and asked about her child. Banks said she couldn't get it off her mind. She was crazy about that boy. Each time she called, police told her they had no information. It turned out that the Jackson Police Department had the answers all along. The department did not respond to detailed questions and has not commented on or explained how it handled Dexter's death. After this article was published, a spokesperson for Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba emailed a statement to NBC News offering our sincerest prayers and condolences to Dexter's family. The spokesperson, Melissa Faith Payne, added in an interview that police did not intentionally harm Dexter or his family. There was miscommunication, but there was no malicious intent anywhere in the whole situation, Payne said. Guess we'll see about that. This account has been pieced together with interviews with Dexter's family and a coroner's investigator, along with court records and a document provided in response to public records requests, a crash report, incident reports, coroner's office reports. Betterston also shared personal notes, emails, Dexter's death certificate, a coroner's report, and case information cards provided to her by the police. The material showed that just before 8 p.m. on March 5th, Dexter was walking across Interstate 55, a 6-lane highway, when a Jackson police SUV driven by an off-duty corporal struck him in the southbound lanes. Isn't that something? The corporal, who alerted police to the collision, was not injured. He was not suspected of being under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and was not given a field sobriety test, nor was he cited for any traffic violations. The death was ruled accidental. The fact that he ran someone over, but he wasn't given any tests, that's interesting. Says Dexter suffered from severe injuries, including to his head. A toxicology report later noted that Dexter had PCP and methamphetamines in his system. An investigator from the Hinds County Coroner's Office responded to the scene. He did not find identification on Dexter while examining him, but found a bottle of prescription medication in his pocket with his name on it. 3 days later, on March 8th, the investigator LeGrand Elliott contacted the medical facility that had provided the prescription and received Betterston's name as Dexter's next of kin. According to Elliott's case notes, Elliott said he called the number listed for Betterston in the facility records and left a voicemail, but got no response. Betterston confirmed that the number Elliott said he called was correct, but she doesn't remember receiving a call from him and was not able to access her Boost mobile phone records to check. Good old Boost Mobile. Elliott confirmed Dexter's identification on March 9th when the state crime lab said his fingerprints matched those they had on file for him, according to his notes. Elliott said in an interview that he passed what he found, a phone number and an address, to the Jackson Police Department's Accident Investigation Squad so that they can notify Betterston of Dexter's death. Now, he said this was March 9th, so this is 4 days after. Once we get that information, I turn it over to the police because it is their jurisdiction so that they can do the proper death notification. Betterston, meanwhile, turned to Facebook, where she posted pictures of Dexter with her phone number, pleading for him or anyone who saw him to call. On March 15th, the day after Betterston reported Dexter missing, Elliott followed up with Jackson Police for updates. No kin has been located as of yet, he wrote in his notes. Elliott made another follow-up phone call March 30th and was told there was nothing new. The following day, the coroner's office asked the Hinds County Board of Supervisors for approval to bury Dexter's remains in a pauper's field at the Hinds County Penal Farm. As that request was being filed, Betterston posted another photo of Dexter on Facebook. Has anyone saw my son? Please call his mother. Okay, that is that's the first article, and they gave us a lot of information, and they gave us a good outline of everything step by step. And I'll just say this: I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but there are a lot of coincidences in this case. But I just find it difficult to believe that the police weren't familiar with Mr. Wade and didn't know where he was and couldn't contact his mother. So what we'll do, we're going to watch a video of this, and then we'll come back and read the second article.
New NBC News reporting tonight is giving us more insight on a story of death and mystery and anger over an apparent lack of good police work and accountability in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm talking about the story of Dexter Wade, who we now know was killed less than a half hour after leaving his home back in March. But his family only found that out this month. Wade was struck and killed by a Jackson police car, apparently, as he tried to cross a highway nearby. And even though police knew exactly who they hit within days of that accident, officials say, his mother, Betterson Wade, would spend the next 7 months. She would spend 7 months looking for her son. It wasn't until 172 difficult days after Betterson last saw Wade that they came together again, this time at his unmarked grave in a state-run cemetery. NBC's John Shoup is the reporter with this story. John, we're glad to have you with us today. The details here are just extraordinary, right? Because essentially what happened here is this 7-month-long mystery for this family, despite police apparently, according to official accounts, knowing for months who they hit, where he was buried, and not reaching out to the family. How did this happen?
That's one of the questions that we have, is how exactly it happened. But we know some details and a sketch of what happened. It began, as you mentioned, on March the 5th when Dexter Wade, he's 37 years old, left home and never came back. It turned out not far from home, not long after he left, he was struck and killed by an off-duty Jackson police officer. A coroner's investigator arrives at the scene, takes his body back to the examination table, finds a prescription bottle of pills that has his name on it. The coroner's investigator calls the hospital where he got the pills, gets the next of kin, who's his mother, Betterson Wade, and forwards that information on to the Jackson Police Department's Accident Investigation Squad. Meanwhile, the mother, Betterson, has no idea that any of this has happened. On the 14th of March, reports him missing to the missing persons unit, and for months is checking for updates and searching for him and gets no answers. Meantime, it's not clear why, but she was never told that they had him in the morgue the entire time. So ultimately, someone figured it out within the Jackson Police Department and let her know, and that's when she realized that while she was looking for him, they had assumed in the coroner's office that he was unclaimed and arranged for him to be buried in a pauper's field. And so as you showed the pictures just earlier, a minute ago, that moment came a couple of weeks ago where she finally got to see the grave marked only with a number of where her son is buried.
I know, John, that you and the team pieced this together from interviews with his family, the coroner's investigator, court records, documents provided in response to your requests, a crash report, incident reports, other documents, office records. I mean, so much of this. It took a lot of putting some puzzle pieces here just to get, I think, some sense of what happened. And yet through it all, as of tonight, have you gotten any response from the police department itself?
None. As soon as just before leaving to come talk to you, I was reaching out to the city. They're preparing some sort of response, but I'm not sure that they fully comprehend of how this mistake was made. We have notes, internal notes and documents that show what they knew. It's just not clear yet about why it was shared.
What does accountability look like for this family? Just quickly, John, what does that look like?
I think for Betterson Wade, the mother, is just somebody to acknowledge that there was a mistake. She can accept if an accident was made, but just an acknowledgement and an apology.
Okay. She just wants to be heard, it sounds like. John Shoup, thank you so much. I really appreciate you bringing us this story tonight.
All right, brothers and sisters, that was the report from NBC News. The next article we have here is from, the next article we have here is from, I believe, CBS News. Dexter Wade's mom seeks federal probe after he's killed by a Mississippi police car and buried without her knowing. All right, let's get into this. It says the family of a man who was fatally struck by an off-duty police officer's SUV, then buried without their knowledge, is calling for a federal investigation. Dexter Wade, 37, was killed on March 5th, according to his death certificate, less than an hour after he left home following an argument. Despite his mother, Dexter Wade, reporting him missing to the Jackson Police Department in Mississippi days later, she said she wasn't informed of his death until August 24th, nearly 6 months after he transitioned. He just disappeared off the face of the earth and nobody knew where he was. None of his friends, nobody, Wade said. All the time he was right down there in the morgue. All they had to say was, "Miss Wade, your son is in the morgue." Dexter had been buried without her knowing in a cemetery outside of a county prison. His grave was marked only by a number. According to the coroner's office, Dexter was identified using prescription medication he was carrying, and next of kin information was sourced from a medical clinic. According to Wade, the coroner was unable to reach her, but she was told police tried to contact her several times. Wade said she never received a call. Give me a reason why y'all did not contact me, why y'all did not knock on my door. I was literally just about to say that. Why didn't somebody come to her door? But she asked a question, and that's the question. Wade says she filed a missing person report with the Jackson Police Department in March after her son was missing for more than a week. She said she spent months following up and searching the city and even asked for help online. Chukwe Antar Lumumba, the mayor of Jackson, said there was a lack of communication between the Missing Persons Division, the coroner's office, and accident investigators. It was in fact an accident and there was no malicious intent, Lumumba said during a press conference last week. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, of course, who is representing the Wade family, said he plans to petition the court to have his body exhumed and have an independent autopsy performed, and then give him a proper funeral for his mother and his daughters and his family. Crump said, who has also represented the families of Tyree Nichols, Malcolm X, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others, said he hopes to have the body exhumed next week. CBS News reached out to Jackson Police Department but did not hear back. Next, we will go to the next article and then we will watch another video. This is from WLBT3. It says attorney findings show Dexter Wade had wallet in front pocket with state ID card and home address. From November 16th. Says findings from independent autopsy are all proof Dexter Wade needs to know that local officials attempted to cover up her son's death. It's a cover-up. You know it's a cover-up. That's too much information to inform me. If they didn't do it that night, what about the next day? They could have knocked on my door. Exactly. I agree with her 100%. On Thursday, preliminary findings were released in an independent autopsy of Dexter Wade, who was run over and killed by an off-duty Jackson police officer back in March. The report shows a wallet was found in the front pocket of Dexter's jeans at the time of his death, and that wallet contained his state identification card and his home address. The wallet was in addition to the prescription bottle found on the deceased father of two, which the Hinds County Coroner's Office used to positively identify the victim and obtain contact information for his next of kin, Betterston, his mother. Even with all that information, Betterston says she never contacted about her son's death, despite filing a missing persons report days after he died. On the night he got run over by the police cruiser, it wasn't nothing for them to run down the street and get me to let me see the last breath of my son, or let me see the glimpse of my son, or have something to say I knew that he died in March. But that didn't happen. Wade was killed on the night of March 5th, according to the police reports. An off-duty police officer struck Wade as he was walking along I-55 just south of McDowell Road. Police reports indicate Wade's leg had been severed as a result of the wreck. Additional details from the independent autopsy conducted by Dr. Frank Peretti show that Wade suffered multiple blunt force injuries to his skull, ribs, and pelvis. So, this sounds like these type of injuries. These don't sound like the type of injuries where a person is slowing down, or they see the person and they try to swerve and they sideswipe them. Or, this sounds like it sounds like they ran the man clean over. His body was completely run over by the police vehicle, according to a release from Medicine's attorney Ben Crump. The tragic news we received from the independent pathologist today was heartbreaking, and for everyone who knew and cared for Dexter Wade, especially his mother, Crump said in a statement. The fact that Dexter had a state identification card and several other identifying items shows us that there was a concerted effort to keep the truth and manner of his death from his family. There is no excuse, not even incompetence, for not notifying the next of kin of an identified man's death. I'm not a fan of Ben Crump, but I have to agree with him here. Officials in the coroner's office said they previously attempted to contact Medicine after her son's death. However, attorneys alleged the police working on Wade's death never did. He was buried at the pauper's grave in July. Medicine was informed of his son's death August 24th, after a new detective took over the case. It's like my son's body belongs to the city, Medicine said. They made all the choices on what happened to him. It was their choice after the cruiser hit him. It was their choice not to tell me he was in the morgue. It was their choice to go down to the Potter's Field. It was their choice to exhume him. Wade has questioned why the police never told her about her son's death. She says it was done in retaliation for the suit she filed several years ago against the police department in response to her brother's death. According to the suit, Medicine claims officers pulled George Robinson out of his vehicle and slammed him to the ground, killing him. One officer, Anthony Fox, has been convicted in connection with the incident. Two other officers were cleared of the death of the 62-year-old, and the Mississippi Attorney General and others have asked for Fox's conviction to be overturned. Of course they have. Other details of the autopsy show Dexter's body was never exhumed, that his body was never embalmed, and that his body was in an advanced state of decomposition. Typically, bodies buried at the pauper cemetery are not embalmed, but placed in a body bag instead of a wooden coffin. State statute allows unclaimed bodies to be buried within 5 days. Coroner Sharon Grissom Stewart held on to Dexter remains for months in the hopes that he might be claimed. All right, we're going to stop right there on this article, and what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video that updates this entire situation.
Those around her seek clarity and justice for her.
A family pastor praying after Dexter Wade's remains were transferred from the Hinds County coroner to a local funeral home once the remains were exhumed from a pauper's grave.
I am sorry!
Wade's mom, Betterstein Wade, expressing anger and outrage at how she says the family was disrespected during the process.
Y'all done took him out the ground. Y'all put him in the ground without my permission. So I don't have no permission.
The family wasn't at the cemetery when Wade was exhumed from the grave Monday morning, though they thought they had permission to be there.
This how the system works? Is this what I'm living in? And I'm living in Mississippi. And this what I got to deal with? That I don't even matter.
Is any additional information you need?
Attorneys representing the family showed a letter from the Board of Supervisors. The letter says the exhumation would take place at 11:30 in the morning, but a county crew with shovels removed the body 3 hours earlier at 8 in the morning.
What are they hiding? What are they hiding? Well, we're going to get to the truth.
County Administrator Kenny Wayne Jones responding to the family's accusations.
It was very unfortunate
No cover up or anything like that, just miscommunication.
The exhumation comes about 2 weeks after the family revealed that Wade had been buried without their permission in August. The family had been searching for Wade for months. He was struck and killed by an off-duty Jackson police officer in March while walking near I-55.
I'll cover it up. Y'all did that. Kept telling me no, no, no.
Jackson police knew the body was in the local morgue, but it took 5 months before they notified the family because police say they couldn't identify Wade.
Now I ask, can I Zoom my child and try to get some peace and try to get a state of mind? Now y'all take that from me. I couldn't even see him come out the ground.
So, as we can hear, you can just hear the pain in his mother's voice and just how distraught she is, and just, oh man, it's I've never met this man. I don't know him. I'm infuriated by this, and the fact that it's just hard for me to believe, considering the circumstances, that there's no type of malicious intent in this case. I could be wrong. It could come from just, an almost innate distrust of the police that many Black people have, based on our experiences. But I just don't understand any type of way that there's no cover up here. And the interesting thing is, reading articles and listening, they say he was hit or struck by the vehicle near the highway, and another one said he's walking along the highway, which makes me wonder, was he not actually in the roadway, and were the police speeding along the shoulder, and is that what happened? And is that the reason why they have tried to no one was really trying to release information on the case? But anyway, we're going to read this last article and watch this last video, and then we're going to close it out. So, says his life mattered. Funeral held for Dexter Wade, man killed by off-duty JPD officer. Says Jackson, Mississippi. A nationally known civil rights activist, TV and radio show host says he's going to fight for the prosecution of anyone involved in the alleged cover-up of Dexter Wade's death. About 200 people turned out Monday for the funeral of Wade, a 37-year-old father of two, who was run over and killed by an off-duty Jackson police officer on March 5th. His mother, Bredestein, wasn't informed of her son's death until August, despite the Hinds County Coroner's Office confirming his identity by March 8th. The funeral was held at the New Horizon Church International. Y'all know how I feel about the Reverend Al Sharpton. Y'all know how I feel about him, National Action Network. But it says here that they helped pay for Wade's funeral expenses. So they did something good. I'll give them that. That could have been my son. That could have been your son, he said. If you think you can put him on a shelf and bury him in a potter's field like he didn't exist and we wouldn't do anything about it, you are sadly mistaken. His life mattered to his mama, his daughters, and we're going to make it matter all over this country. Others in attendance included Representative Benny Thompson, Hinds County District Attorney Jody Owens, District 3 Supervisor David Archie, and Ward 3 Councilman Kenneth Stokes. Stokes was the only representative from the city present. Let me just say this. Brother Lumumba, Chukwueze Lumumba, I believe he's the mayor of Jackson, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's made a mistake on this one in not showing up. I understand that possibly he thought that the atmosphere would be such that it would be hostile to him showing up. But since he's a representative of the city and not a representative of the police, I think in this case it would have been to his benefit to show up and just show sympathy to the family. That way he's not really taking a position, but he's just showing that they do care and that they would like to make this better. I think he made a political, a personal, and just a mistake as a black man in not doing that. That's just my personal opinion. Says Wade was run over by an off-duty officer on the night of March 5th on I-55 south, just south of McDowell Road. Wade was said to be walking on the interstate when he was hit. The officer, a more than 10-year veteran with the Jackson Police Department, was on his way home. An independent autopsy revealed Wade was carrying a government-issued ID. He also had a prescription drug bottle, which the coroner's office used to obtain information for Betterston, Wade's next of kin. Benjamin Crump, a national civil rights attorney helping with the case, said the coroner shared Betterston's contact information with JPD on March 9th. Betterston filed a missing persons report days later on March 14th. It would take another 172 days for police to inform her that her son was dead. By then, he had been buried for weeks under marker 672 at the county pauper's burial ground in Raymond. He was exhumed last week. Betterston and other family members were supposed to be present for the exhumation, but the county dug up Wade, as we saw in the last report, before relatives arrived. Betterston maintains detectives didn't tell her about her son's death because she was already suing JPD for the death of her brother, George Robinson. According to that suit, Robinson, who was released from the hospital days earlier after having a stroke, was pulled out of his vehicle and slammed to the ground by JPD officers. One officer has since been convicted in the case. The charges against the other two have been tossed. I didn't even know. Okay, so the man who hadn't even recovered from a stroke, the police, wow. Man, the stuff that this woman is going through with these police is unbelievable. So I'm gonna stop the article right there. It's just, brothers and sisters, what we're gonna do, we're gonna watch this last video and then we're gonna close this out.
Was shown for Dexter Wade and his family during his funeral today.
Top News' Tia McKenzie was there and joins us in the studio now. Tia, what'd you see?
Walt and Melanie, it's a story that's gained national attention for the family of Dexter Wade. It was an emotional day as they laid their loved one to rest in a proper burial and funeral service. Reverend Al Sharpton, civil rights attorney Ben Crump, and other local officials are seeking justice in Wade's case. Leaders are calling on the Department of Justice to investigate after an independent autopsy found Dexter Wade experienced blunt force trauma and his leg was amputated. Wade was killed after being hit by a Jackson police vehicle in March. His mother did not discover he was dead and had been buried in a pauper's field until August.
Were you mad because his mother had stood up to the police department about her brother? Is this some kind of revenge? Is this some kind of you freaked out and didn't know what you did? Whatever it was, tell it to the judge. Bring him to court and prosecute him.
The autopsy also found Wade had a photo ID with his address in his jeans when he was killed. Councilman Kenneth Stokes also attended the memorial service and declared November 20th as Dexter Wade Day. Tia McKenzie, 12 News.
I'm gonna just say this, brothers and sisters. We have to find some other way to address our issues with the police, and we have to find some other people who are more trustworthy than people like the Reverend Al Sharpton. But in this instance, I must say that he did ask the questions that need to be asked. What really happened to Brother Dexter Wade? What really happened? How was he really killed? Was it intentional? Was it not? Why does it appear to be a cover-up? Is it just some type of weird coincidence where you're in a small town and things happen? Why wasn't his mother contacted? These are things that I'm not sure if we'll ever really know the truth. But this just is a continuing legacy of the police always having something suspicious going on when it comes to black people. And the continuing legacy of disrespect of black life, disrespect of black people, a dehumanization of black men, and just overall just something that just it just really, really frustrates and angers me, because all this was so unnecessary. And yet here we are 6 months later, where the man has finally received a proper burial. But the reality is we still don't even know what actually took place and why the police seem to be trying their best to cover everything up. So with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is your brother DC Radical 1. And with that, I say a BB for Hodie and straight black pride. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cashapp is $DC Radical1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A BB for Hodie and straight black pride.